Welcome back to the channel guys, and yes guys, this is the CLK DTM that you didn't know about, called the CLK DTM P900 track sport, and this is actually the very prototype, i.e. the basic test mule that actually shaped the proper production car. And of course, as you all may know, the CLK DTM is one of the most iconic AMGs to ever be created, and of course a proper racetrack weapon, if you will, especially this one. Of course, the road legal one is of course based on the race car, but nevertheless it is still a complete beast, 582 horsepower from that. But nevertheless, coming back to the P900, because of course this thing has literally got most bits taken right from the race car and put on right here, especially the wing, as you guys can see. And I mean, just take a look at the looks guys, this thing is a complete beast, because the race car quite literally, it's got canards, it's got the tow hook as well, the front splitter, and of course the flared wheel arches with louvers over the wheel arches, as you guys can see. And as well as I said, the massive wing, which is literally taken right off of the race car, quad tips of course. But one thing though, how are you going to open the trunk? Because, well, as it looks like, the wing is literally mounted not on the trunk but beside the trunk onto the body, so you might not be able to open the trunk. But nevertheless, Merc definitely did think through it, and of course the proper CLK DTM, i.e. the production car, did not have that. And of course, only 100 actual proper production CLK DTMs were ever made, and even less of the cabriolets were ever made. To be precise, 80 of the cabriolets were made, making them one of the most desirable AMG models in the market. And of course, as you all may know, the production models came out with the M155 under the bonnet, i.e. the 5.5 liter supercharged V8 that put out 582 horsepower, i.e. the same motor that was used in the SLR McLaren. But this had something else, and if you ask me, this is the best and the most legendary AMG V8 to ever be crafted, but we'll be getting to that in a bit. And of course, coming back to the looks, I mean, the flared wheel arches are just a complete blissful look on its own, and not to mention that this thing is a complete track weapon, literally taken right off the track and put onto the road, a complete beast. And of course, the front end with the tow hook as well, one of the most menacing looking cars you'll ever see. And of course, 6-spoke wheels, carbon ceramics, those, I mean, the louvers are something that didn't carry over to, of course, onto the production car, but nevertheless this thing still looks oh so good. And of course, that massive wing at the back, quad tips of course, and of course it's got the race car style windows as well, because race car, and as well as the side portrait. I mean, the CLK DTM on its own, one of the most iconic and one of the best looking AMGs to ever be made, and these are appreciating like hell. And the thing is, back then it wasn't like a normal person could go in and purchase. It was like literally the situation as it is right now with the 992 GT3 RS. You had to be invited by Merc, and you actually had to be given an allocation for this. And well, I don't blame them, because this is one of the most rarest and one of the most desirable ones, and very few people have them. And even a couple F1 drivers such as Jenson Button and a couple more people had this, and well, that makes it all the more desirable. And of course, only 180 made across both coupes and cabriolets, and well, that makes it even more desirable. I mean, the look on its own is a complete timeless machine. And well guys, of course, I mean, that huge, humongous, very prominent rear wing at the back, I mean, can you imagine if that made it onto the production model? I mean, that would have been way past the radical point, but nevertheless, the production model still looks so good. And if you ask me, the very wing that they went with on the production model looks way better than what this would have looked on the production model. But nevertheless, it is still a proper race car wing, literally taken out of the race car and put onto the P900. Of course, it didn't make it into the production line, but nevertheless, a proper timeless look still succeeds in putting that image. But nevertheless guys, the main party popper, and that is the fact that under the bonnet in the prototypes, of which only 2 were ever made, which we'll be talking about in a bit, it had the M156 6.2 liter naturally aspirated V8 that put out 510 horsepower, and it could generate a maximum of 630 Nm of torque. Of course, it was not as potent as the M155 back then, but that nevertheless makes it the P900 the first ever Mercedes to feature the M156. And can you imagine guys, if the M156 carried on out of the production car, that would have surely been bonkers. But nevertheless, the M155 is still an icon. And of course, the M156 on its own was the first ever engine to ever be completely constructed by AMG, and boy did they go ham. And well, of course, as you all may know, the production model got the M155, i.e. the predecessor to the M156, and of course the M156 debuted in 2007 in the E63 AMG. But nevertheless guys, I mean, can you imagine if the M156 stuck in all the way back in the early 2000s with the CLK DTM? That would have been completely monstrous. And if you ask me, this is the most legendary and the best AMG V8 to be constructed. I mean, I grew up with the SLS AMG that was powered by the M159, which is basically the same M156 but bumped up in power, but nevertheless the same 6.2 liter NA V8. Of course, it's called the 6.3, and that is because it's got the cubic capacity of 6,203, and they have to round it off to over, of course, to show that if they say 6.2, it will feel like it's a 6.1, but nevertheless, it's a proper conundrum on its own. But the actual displacement on its own, it's the 6.2 liter NA V8 called the 6.3, but nevertheless, the M156 was the main party popper in here, guys. And well, 510 horsepower, although it was not as powerful or as potent as the M155, do not forget that this thing is a complete track machine, and this thing literally didn't have any big gizmos, no big infotainment screens, none of that, because as you'll see in the interior right now, this thing was literally the race car just put in with aircon and swapped out from the 4-liter NAV8 to the M156. And well, you'll just see, guys, just hold on, because of course the M156 on its own, a complete beastly engine. And now moving on, of course, guys, that M156 can never fail to look good. And now moving on to the main one of the main party poppers as well, the interior. Well, as you guys can see, you've got a proper roll cage on its own, because race car, as well as I think 4-point harnesses as well, because race car, once again, the seats with AMG embroidery, what look like to be leather seats with the Alcantara inlay, they look really good. And as well as a complete carbon door card. Well, this isn't a door card, well, it basically is, but you've literally got no gizmos. As I said, this is just a simple handle and a tag, or a handle to of course close the door, but that's about it. This is literally the pure definition of because race car, as well as a beautiful affalterbach crest on it. Why not? And now, as you guys can see, a complete roll cage that completely cocoons the passenger and driver to make sure that they're safe. And well, as the fact that it's a race car, it is very much required. As I said, once again, 4-point harnesses. And as you guys can see on the center console, this thing is very much race car-esque in its own. And now coming to the steering wheel, I mean, just look at the gauge cluster on its own, because race car a complete digital gauge cluster, as well as a shift light on top of the steering wheel. I mean, what else could you ask for? Just look at that. And in fact, only 2 of these were ever built, as I said, which we'll be talking about in a bit, as well as the fact that you got aircon in this. Of course, this is a prototype, so they had to put in all the features that they would put in the production model. And well, I mean, the shift light, the complete all digital gauge cluster on its own. I mean, what else could you ask for in terms of a race car on the road? And well, guys, I mean, the center console, as I said, is very simple, as the race car is, as it should be. No big gizmos, no big electronics, no infotainment screens, none of that BS, just a pure connection between the driver and the machine. And well, of course, the same exact gear lever that carried on into the production car, with the park, reverse, neutral and drive, as well as the start stop button, a couple more knobs as well as the proper flick switch for the ignition. And well, that's about it. That's just basic simplicity in a proper complete race car as well. I mean, guys, what else could you ask for? As I said, this is the textbook definition of because race car. And well, as the fact that it had a full size steering wheel, not a proper like half size steering wheel like an F1 steering wheel or anything. It had the full size steering wheel with the paddles as well, an aircon system, as you guys can see. And I mean, that all digital gauge cluster on its own with that shift light, I mean, that is just a proper reference, not even reference, it literally means because race car. I mean, as I said, guys, this is an unknown variant, the most unknown CLK DTM out there, but a proper definition of because race car. Of course, the seats with the orange contrast stitching, which actually looks really good with the AMG embroidered in the orange stitch. Of course, 4-point harnesses, Alcantara inlay in the leather seats, roll cage, a complete unhinged race car, and as well as a complete, literally, you've got a carbon panel as a door card. I mean, what else do you need, guys? Because race car, this is the meaning. I mean, I'm calling it, guys. The CLK DTM P900 Track Sport is the proper textbook definition of because race car. I'm put that in the car dictionary somewhere. And of course, well, that just completes it with the interior. And who can forget, guys, the M156, the most legendary, the most iconic. For me, of course, the M156 is 6.2 liter NAV8, 510 horsepower, rear wheel drive, a complete unhinged monster. But of course, it didn't carry on into the production model. But nevertheless, the M155 still did not let down, although it had that 5-speed automatic gearbox. But it was tuned to match the power, which was literally nearly 600 horsepower at the helm. But nevertheless, an icon of its time, and something the P900 is literally something that most people don't even know about. The massive wing, the DTM wing. Of course, the production model got dual tips. This has quad tips, a complete livery on its own, louvers over the flared arches. I mean, what else could you ask for, guys? The tow hook, the looks, the livery, the 6-spoke wheels, the carbon ceramics. I mean, I can just go ramble on and on about this, guys, but it is still a complete icon, and it always will be. And now coming to the fact that only 2 of these were ever made. Of course, both of them were the prototypes, i.e. the test mules, and one is in fact still owned by AMG, and it is on display in some museum in the USA, and the other one is owned, which is in fact this one, and this in fact went up for sale in 2021, and I'm pretty sure someone definitely picked it up. I mean, if you're coming across this is literally the equivalent of seeing a unicorn, which I couldn't give 2 shits about, but nevertheless, a CLK DTM P900 Track Sport, you got me. I mean, guys, what else could you ask for? The because race car, proper textbook definition written by Merc. I mean, guys, these were the good old days when Mercs were being made as Mercs. I mean, now we've got a stupid C63 with a 2-liter inline 4. I mean, we've literally gone from big block 6 liter NA V8s to even, I wouldn't even mind the 5.5 liter twin turbo V8 or even the M177 4 liter twin turbo V8, and now we've got the new Antares that literally puts out more power with the same M177. So that on its own, if you ask me, is a big slap in Merc's face, and I am a huge Merc fan. Why? My literal favorite brand is Merc. And if you ask me, they should definitely pull their socks up and drop the stupid 2 liter inline 4. And the new CLE on its own, I mean, I'm not going to get into that. The 53 and 63, the cylinders, or you don't even get a V8 in it. As the 63 suggests, you don't even get that. And these are the days back when 63 actually meant something. But nevertheless, guys, the CLK DTM P900 track sport, what do you think? Would you take it? And of course, in terms of pricing, of course, the CLK DTM, the production models on their own are, they are just appreciating in value. But if you catch one of these and if they are at sale, I would advise you to highly take them, because this is going to skyrocket more than anything else. And given the fact that it had the 6.2 NA V8, making this a proper pre-debut engine of the official M156, which debuted in 07, as I said, I mean, you're literally getting a proper race car on the road. The M156 510 horsepower, what else could you ask for? Anyway, guys, thanks a lot for watching. Remember to hit that sub button and click the bell to ensure you don't miss out on any future videos. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. See ya.